Guys, welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Today I want to answer a few questions about long-range glassing, and I have posted on my Instagram several photos in January prior to the Coues deer hunt down in Mexico. I had decided that I wanted to try and find another option that is a lighter weight option for the Kowa Highlander, the 32 by 82 Kowa Highlander fluorite with the fluorite lenses. A little bit of a backstory. So before I used Kowas, I used Dr. 40 power super wide angle lenses, and they were the old Doctors, and those ocular lenses actually, I pulled the eye cups, like the rubber that was around the eye cups on those old Doctor field of view, and I would actually put my eyes right up against the lens. One of the things that I did not like about the Doctor lens, now these are the old Doctors, was that the lenses were very, very concave, and on the edges of the Dr. 40s, it wasn't as clear. The center, the very center that you look through most of the time, was great. And one of the things when I ended up switching to the Kowas that I really liked is I felt like the edge-to-edge clarity on the Kowa Highlanders was much better than the Doctors. But I guess I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's back up. Obviously, I've glassed with 10 by 42, 10 by 42 or 10 by 40 Zeiss, the black rubber coated, kind of that old classic style Zeiss was actually the first pair of binoculars that I got that was, of any quality. Then after a year or two of using those, I switched to 10 by 42 Swarovski SLCs. Dar and I both had a pair of those 10 by 42 SLCs. Then when the 15s came out, we each got a pair of the 15s, and we glassed for a long time for, all around the hills, the Coues deer hills, with 15 Swarovskis. And then guys were starting to use these Doctor optics, and so the option at the time, I believe, was a 30 power fixed. Then there was a 40 power super wide angle, and there was a 20 by 50 variable lens, all with, I believe they were an 80 millimeter objective on the old Doctors. And anyway, I settled on the 40 power super wide angle, and I used those Doctors, I want to say, for a couple of seasons and really liked them. And I don't actually have the weight of the old style Doctors, but they were lighter than the Kowas. The thing that got me to switch to the Kowas was the edge-to-edge clarity on the Kowa Highlanders actually was phenomenal. But there was some things that when the Kowas came out, Dar and I actually got one of the very first pair that the Outdoorsman's got in Arizona, and started using them right away. And when I would put them next to the Doctors, the Kowas were brighter, the Kowas were more vibrant, and it seemed like from a comfort standpoint, your eye comfort, you could swim around with your eyes in the ocular lens of the Kowa Highlanders, and I ended up selling my Dr. 40s. So I want to say that was probably 2000, I'm guessing like 2010, 11-ish, somewhere in there. And then Dar and I, make a long story short, we bought that pair, and then I actually bought another pair. So Dar and I each had a pair of the Kowa Highlander 32 by 82 with the fluorite lenses. Now, Kowa also makes a 21 power lens or eyepiece and a 50 wide angle eyepiece. And I have tried the 50 wide angle eyepiece, and darn, I just felt like the field of view was so small, and we didn't care for the 50 wide angle eyepieces. And then the function of the 21 eyepieces, I've had a lot of people that say they really like the 21 eyepieces. But my point is, if you're going to carry that much weight, why not just use the 32 power? Not to mention, I felt like I really liked the 32 power on the Kowas. So optically, the 32 Kowas were, in my mind, superior to the Doctors. Now, I will say that there's a whole generation of Doctor optic that came out here in the last year or two that I have not tried. I've never used them, so I can't speak as to how the new Doctors perform. But darn, I were very happy with the Kowas, but while being very happy with the Kowas, they obviously had some drawbacks. And those drawbacks were the fact that the Kowas weigh 13.6 pounds. And then you put basically a Bogen Manfrotto clip onto the Bogen Manfrotto 501 tripod head. So that's 13.6 pounds plus the clip, so say 14 pounds, plus the tripod. Because the Kowas weigh so much, you have to use, the legs I use are a 55 XV Bogen Manfrotto, real thick diameter leg aluminum tripod. They do make a carbon fiber model, but in other words, the tripod weighed as much as, once you weighed the legs and the head, I had about 13 pounds in the tripod. So right there, I was looking at close to 26.6 pounds. And then the thing that was different from the Kowas to the Doctors was the fact that with the Kowas, because of the angled eyepiece, so if you've never seen a pair of Kowas, picture like a regular set of binoculars, but then where the ocular lens is, it actually comes out at a 45 degree, so that it's an angled eyepiece. So one of the things about glassing with an angled eyepiece is the fact that you cannot sit on the ground. Let's say you're just going to sit on your glassing pad, just sit flat on the ground and glass on your butt and be glassing out, because in essence, at the angle that those angled eyepieces come up, you actually need a glassing stool to elevate your butt up in a position where you then can look down into the angled ocular, if that makes sense. So all along, when I switched from the Doctors to the Kowas for years, loving the Kowas, one of the things that I always went back to is I hated having to carry the heavy tripod. I hated having to carry the glassing stool. And unlike the Doctors, where I could use a lighter tripod, not as light as I could use, like, say, with my 10s or my 15s, but a lighter tripod, carrying the glassing stool, in essence, I was end up carrying 28.11 ounces between the Kowa 32 Highlanders, the tripod, and the stool. So before I even put, water, food, rain gear, glassing pad, etc. in my backpack, I was starting out with 28.11 pounds, 28.11 pounds, 28 pounds, 11 ounces to be exact, the best I can figure. So that's a lot of weight, right off the bat to just start with. And what I found over the last couple of years is that the Kowas just ended up not making it up on top of many knobs. I didn't take them in my pack very much, and I'll be 44 here in a few days. And while I feel like, with all the exercise and stuff that I've been doing over the last, say year, trying to be in as best shape as I could be in, it's still a lot of weight. So in essence, I was always thinking, man, it would be nice to be able to have that power to pick apart the hills like I do with the Kowas. But the reality was the Kowas weren't making it out on many of my excursions where I was hiking, up to a knob or hiking on a ridge or spending all day out glassing. The Kowas were strictly, they would stay in the Ranger, and they were great for going to these ranches in Mexico where a lot of times you can drive up to high points and glass, or doing a lot of the sheep hunting like Dar and I do, driving around the perimeter of some of these mountain ranges in western Arizona and being able to just drive in the Ranger and glass, 2, 3, 4 miles away with the Kowas. They're fantastic for that. But there was always this need for me to have them up on these, day hikes and, out in the field. And I just ended up not carrying the Kowas. So to fast forward all of that, kind of during the fall this year, well, let me back up. My friend Craig Steele with Exclusive Pursuit Outfitters uses the Kowa twin spotting scopes, and he has a bracket that was made, and he's been using those now for a couple of years, and he seems to really like the Kowa twin spotting scopes, not the Kowa Highlanders, but the Kowa twin spotting scopes. And he was telling me, about the weight savings and what have you. What I've always heard about the twin spotting scopes that I'm going to talk about now is the fact that the twin spotting scopes would get knocked out of collimation, and that they, whatever bracket that was made out there, they just would get knocked off. And as soon as the, in essence, if one of the spotting scopes was turned in or turned out or not lined up perfectly, you would get double vision. You would look through and it would be all wonky and your eyes would freak out, and you'd pull your eyes away and you get real dizzy. So I'd always heard that was the problem with the twin spotting scopes. To be quite honest, I kind of just never thought the twin spotting scopes that anybody was ever going to figure out how to get that collimation problem fixed. Well, I talked to a friend of mine, Jeremy Gugelmeyer with Sagebrush Hunts. He guides a lot in New Mexico and Texas and Colorado, and does antelope and mule deer and whitetail deer. I actually shot a whitetail with him in Kansas a number of years ago. He told me that he had been glassing pretty much all fall using the Swarovski twin spotting scopes. So having a lot of respect for him, and he tends to use really good gear and stuff, that he's kind of on the cutting edge of stuff as far as if there's something good, he wants to use it. I started doing a little investigation and ended up pulling the trigger. I bought two 65mm STS Swarovski spotting scopes. Cody down at the Outdoorsman's helped me with that. And the key, that, like Jeremy said, I don't want to take credit for any of this setup because it's Jeremy and his friends who live in central Arizona, Benny Wells and Jason Giese, and there's a whole bunch of those guys' friends. They're just acquaintance, and Benny and Jason are just an acquaintance of mine, but there's a whole group of those guys that use these twin spotting scopes. So I thought, well, I'll just buy them and see how I like them compared to the Kowas. So I did before this Coues deer season in Mexico. And I went up and I bought the adapter from Benny Wells with Wells Manufacturing up in Prescott. And you guys can check him out on Instagram. And his Instagram handle is BHDUBYA. BHD as in dog, U as in umbrella, B as in boy, Y as in yellow, A is in apple. Benny Wells is the group that him and his dad manufactured the bracket that holds these twin spotting scopes. So the Cody gets the spotting scopes, the HD 65mm STS spotting scopes from Swarovski. I get the bracket and I get them mounted up, and I took them to Mexico, and before I went down to Mexico, I got them all put together, and I talked to Jeremy, and he said, Jay, he says, a guy I know had an issue with one of the eyepieces, and he ended up unscrewing the eyepiece and pulling it completely off. And he said when he did that, he told me that he likes the setup even more, that it gives it more of a field of view. So I didn't even really use these twin spotting scopes until I pulled the eye cups off. Now I have looked through them, but once I actually unscrewed the eye cups and pulled the eye cups off, I've never put the eye cups back on these. And what I can tell you is, by pulling the eye cups off, in my mind, the field of view, it doesn't double, but it's incredible the difference in pulling the eye cups off, how much better field of view, how much you've got that Swarovski wow factor, and it feels like I can get my eyes, right in there next to the lenses, which I'm a huge advocate myself on all my binoculars, whether it's a 10 by 42 EL or 10 by 42 EL range, or my 12 by 50s, my 15 by 56. Actually, I just sold the 1250s, but I glass with my eye cups screwed all the way in. In essence, you know how you can counterclockwise unscrew or unthread to a certain extent the rubber eye cups on the outside of the ocular of most binoculars, and I like to screw them all the way in and get my eyes as close to that lens as I possibly can. To me, it just makes them lighter, makes them brighter, makes everything pop. And so for me, unscrewing the eye cups off of these 25 by 50 by 65 twin spotters was just a game changer for me, and I'd highly recommend anybody that gets this setup, the very first thing you would do is pull the eye cups off of these. Now, I'll be posting a few more pictures on my Instagram so you can see. I basically made I think they're called koozies, but they're made out of foam, and they're, like what you would put a drink in to keep them cold. I basically cut a couple of those and kind of made this cover with duct tape. I'm looking at it right now. And if you follow me, it's a cover that goes over both of the ocular parts of the spotting scopes. And I made it about an inch or an inch and a half too tall, in essence, so that there would be a 1-inch air gap inside of this little protector, so that nothing is going to hit the glass. Because once you unscrew the eye cups, the eye cups give a little protection, but there's also a rubber cup that comes with that dangles off. You've seen them where they dangle off the little string, so you protect your lenses. Well, I've made this little protective case so that there's about a 1 to 1.5 inch air gap, but what it does is it allows me to keep the lenses off, pull this whole duct tape contraption on and off. Whenever I stop the glass, I just pop it off and set the mounting bracket into the tripod, and I'm glassing right away. So I'll try and put a couple of pictures on my Instagram at JScottOutdoors so you guys can see that. The other thing is this bracket that is made by Wells Manufacturing has a slick little handle, and I'll try and include some pictures of that as well. That actually it makes a nice little handle that when you're moving these spotting scopes on and off the tripod, or I still carry my 10 powers around my neck, so there's times when maybe I want to look at something really close, or maybe I just want to glass fast. I actually just pop the twin spotters off, grab the handle, and set it on my little container. that from the Outdoorsman's. That's a whole nother story. There's a container for these. But the bracket is really slick. And one of the things that I noticed, I used these for 17 days down in Mexico, and basically glassing every single day, hiking all over. And these with the bracket, I'm at 7.5 pounds. So right there, the Kowas, going back to our numbers before, the Kowas are 13.6 pounds, and this setup is 7.5 pounds. But when you take into the consideration that I use my exact tripod that I use with my 10s or my 15s, which is roughly 3 pounds, I'm in essence at 10.5 pounds with my full setup. Where with the Kowas, I was at 13.6, 13 pounds on the tripod, and 2.5 with the stool. So I'm 28 pounds, 11 ounces. So in essence, I've got over an 18-pound savings just by switching to these twin 65mm Swarovski spotting scopes. The one thing I will say optically about these twin spotters, in my opinion, is you get that Swarovski wow factor. Every pair of optics that I own is Swarovski. The Kowas were the only pair of optics that I own that weren't Swarovskis. Now every single piece of optic in my lineup is Swarovski. I love Swarovski's customer service. I like the people at Swarovski. I've been fortunate to go over to Austria. I've been to the factory. I love the story. I love that it's a family-owned company. But, most importantly, I think they make the best. I think optically, Swarovski optic is the best, and I want to use the best. And so 17 days in the field with these twin spotters, absolutely love them. Now, guys ask me, should I go with a 20 to 60 eyepiece? And my answer is, just like what Jeremy told me, is absolutely not. The 25 by 50 eyepiece is what makes this setup, the wide angle 25 by 50 eyepiece. And I've got them in my hand right here. I do want to point out a couple things. So since it's a 25 to 50 eyepiece, in essence, the one thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that you can turn this clockwise, and that maxes it out or at the low end of the power range at 25 power. And where you can get messed up is that each eye needs to be focused individually, as well as the magnification. In other words, you have to glass with these on 25 power on both eyes. If one's on 25 and one's on 30, or if one's on 25 and one's, say, between 25 and 30, as soon as you look through, you will immediately be like seeing double. So what I have found is that if I just glass on 25 power, and what I do is I first look through when I first set them on the tripod, I close my left eye, I look through my right eye, I'm on 25 power on both, I focus my right eye because that's my dominant eye, and then I close my right eye and I look through with my left eye and I focus my left. Then I open both eyes and I look through the binocular, and if I have to tweak one or another just a little bit, just to crisp it up, that's what I do. And then I'm set to glass. And one thing that I like about the Swarovskis also is I don't have to do a lot of focusing, like from looking from 300 yards out to 2 miles. There's not a lot of focusing. I will say with the Kowas, I was constantly having to focus each eye when I would be looking at different distances and yardages. Now, there are times when I do have to focus the Swarovskis, but I don't think I have to focus near as much. But I also like the fact that the focus ring on the Swarovski twin spotters is real fine. So I feel like I can get a really good, tight, crisp, sharp focus with these twin spotters. Another thing to mention while I'm looking at this is we talk about collimation and getting knocked out of, let's just call it alignment. So in essence, if one spotting scope is looking a little bit in and one spotting scope's looking a little bit out, or vice versa, you're going to get kind of a double image. I did not have any trouble at all with this bracket. And one of the things that I think is so cool about it is there's actually two places where it is fixed. The normal shoe, if you will, the shoe on the spotting scope that you would attach any, adapter clip that would go into your tripod, that is a fixed point. And then the way the bracket is machined out towards the end on the objective lens where the sunshade pulls in and out, the actual adapter fits. You pull out the sunshade just about a quarter of an inch, and the adapter actually fits perfectly right in that gap, and then you snug the sunshade back up, and there's three bolts, nuts to tighten. There's one in the middle between the two spotting scopes, and then there's one on the outside. And so once Cody helped me put these together, and I've never touched them or adjusted them since. I haven't had to do anything to tighten them or loosen them, and I've never taken them out of this bracket. Now, I think they're real simple to take out because all there is 3 Allen screws, and then the shoe that I was talking about, you would just unscrew that, and you can use these spotting scopes independently. If you were going on a Dall sheep hunt, which I actually have one booked in 2018, I'm considering just taking one of these little spotting scopes, which I think is another cool thing about this setup is, I could take my 10 ELs on the Dall sheep hunt and one of these little spotting scopes, or if say you bought a pair of these with a friend, you could trade on and off who's using them, but then if you each wanted to take a spotting scope, that would be something you could do as well. I want to address people's eyes that are close together. That was one thing. When I went up, before I bought the adapter, Benny Wells just said, hey, come look through mine before you buy the adapter and buy the spotting scopes. Just come look through them. And I was worried that my eyes were too close together because on my 15 power binoculars, I have to stagger the eye cup. There's a little ring that attaches to the objective lens. And in other words, there's the eye cup, and then there's, most guys will know what I'm talking about. There's a ring, rubber ring that attaches to over the top of the rubber coating. And if you close your binoculars, my eyes are so close together that I actually have to stagger that rubber so that they don't hit each other. Well, I was worried that my eyes wouldn't work because my eyes are too close together. I will tell you, when I use these twin spotters, when they're in the fixed position and then I go to squeeze my eyes, together, squeeze the ocular lenses together, the rubber is touching. So that's another fixed point that I think is pretty cool, is that the rubber is pushed all the way together. So the perfect place for my eyes is where the rubber meets. Now, I will tell you, Dar Colburn, we have since sold my Dar and I's pair of Kowas and my pair of Kowas, and Dar switching to this also. He looked through mine, and his eyes, surprisingly, are even narrower than mine, and mine are the most narrow of anybody that I've ever known. Well, Dar's are even narrower, and he can't actually use eye cups on his 15. So the new 15 Swarovskis, he actually has to pull the eye cups off, and what he's going to need to do on his pair when he buys them is, in essence, when you squeeze the ocular lenses together to go ahead and look through, he's going to have to lightly shave in the middle where they touch, where mine are touching. He's going to have to take about 1/8 of an inch of rubber coating, which is not a big deal. Just shave off with a little razor blade, just enough to get them just a smidge closer. And I want to say we measured, and it was like 3 inches, 3 1/4 inches center to center, but don't quote me on that. That could be, I think that was actually edge to edge. But anyway, we both have very narrow eyes. They work perfect for me. Dar's going to have to shave his just a little bit. Optically, I was spotting stuff, Coos deer, 3 miles away easily. I will tell you that I mainly glass on 25 power. And when I see something that I really want to zoom in on, what I do is I'm on 25 power and I keep watching it with my right eye, and I zoom my left eye into 50. So as I'm watching, I don't even take my eyes out. I zoom to 50. Okay, I'm still watching. I've got this, the thing in the subject, the buck or whatever, in my right eye at 25. My left eye is now on 50. And at that point, I can either move my right eye over and look at 50, or I can close my right eye, immediately get my left focus on 50, and quickly switch my right eye over to 50 and then focus, and then I'm looking at my subject on full 50 power. Now, I was blown away as well when the light is right, and a lot of times when you have good light and it's at your back, I crank it up to full 50 and just glass with it like that with the sun at my back. And I really like it. I have also glassed through the whole power range, meaning at 30 power, at 35 power, at 40 power, 45 power, and 50 power. But again, you have to have it exact. So when you start, let's say 40 power range, what you do is you want to make sure on the Swarovskis here, there's actually, it says 40X, and then there's a little arrow. You want to make sure the 4 on each eye, in essence on each ocular, each tube, each is at exactly 4, or each is exactly at 0 in the 40, or each is at the X at the end of 40. As long as you're matched up, it glasses really nice. And I found that I really like 25 and I really like 40. Those are kind of the two power ranges that I glass the most in. Back to the pros of this twin spotter, it's a weight savings. 18 pounds is a huge weight savings. No angled eyepiece, which to me is huge with these twin spotters. I can use my regular tripod that I use for my 10s and my 15s. I can carry these in my backpack. I can sit on my butt, which I don't like sitting in a glassing stool. A lot of these little knobs and places where we glass for coos deer, we're sliding up in a rock pile and kind of tucking in, and a stool is loud and clanky. And quite honestly, when you get to be glassing for long periods of time, bent over at an angle, I never could really get used to that. So from a weight savings alone, these are a home run. From a no-angled eyepiece, these are a home run. And the need for not using a glassing stool and being able to glass, just sitting on my rear end is premium. Price-wise, the Kowas are $5,000. Price-wise, the twins roughly $2,418 with the 25 by 50 eyepiece. So you're looking at $4,836 plus the adapter. The adapter runs about $500. So money in and money out, the Swarovskis are just a smidge, maybe $100 or $200 more than the Kowas. But I think with that, you get the Swarovski wow factor and you get a huge weight savings. I want to encourage you guys, if you have any questions at all, feel free to send me an email at jscottoutdoors@gmail.com. Feel free to give Cody at the Outdoorsman's a call, 1-800-291-8065. Also remember, use the J. Scott promo code ordering anything at the Outdoorsman's. You get that 10% discount. He's got a lot of great accessories and products, Outdoorsman's products there. that you've heard about on this podcast. And one thing I might add is Cody actually for a long time has made these really nice cases for the Kowas that you can put in your backpack. Well, I had him make me one of these cases, and I'll put pictures on my Instagram for you guys to check it out. But it's got just enough padding, to be perfect in your pack, but not so much that it weighs too much. It's got a nice zipper pouch. It's got a couple of nice little pockets that you can put little optics cleaners, and I highly recommend. I'm kind of a freak when it comes to taking care of my binoculars. I still have all of the original cases that the Swarovskis come in, and I'm one that when I glass, I always put my binos back in the case. I'm a firm believer in a bino chest harness. And keeping my optics, that's me zipping up the case. And it's got a nice little handle on it as well. I'm just huge into taking care of my optics. I try and keep them really clean. I try not to clean them too much because I don't want to scratch them, but I certainly use air in a can to blow them off. I use a lens pen to, brush them first lightly, and then use optic cleaners that you can just get at Costco, and that's what I clean my optics with. But hope that helps. If you guys have any questions about these twin spotters from Swarovski and the bracket from Benny Wells, just contact me. You can follow him on Instagram as well. And guys, I really appreciate you supporting this podcast. I want to thank my sponsors, GoHunt.com Insider. Make sure to use the JScott promo code when signing up, and you'll get a $50 KUIU gift card immediately sent to you. Don't forget the Arizona deadline is due, and for elk and antelope, and we've got that pretty much now in our rearview mirror, and we can start looking forward to sheep and deer, and we can start looking forward to Utah and New Mexico and some of the other western states. Alaska applications or results, for the Dall sheep and the goat should be out here in a few days. So it's exciting times. Also want to thank phonescope.com. Cheston and his crew, they can adapt any phone to any binocular or spotting scope. And then you can take great photos and great video right through your phone. You get a 10% discount if you use the JScott16 promo code. Of course, the Outdoorsman's, which I've already mentioned, Cody Nelson and his crew, 1-800-291-8065. Guys, thanks for your support of this podcast. We've got a lot of great things coming, and it's just great to have a loyal following, and I appreciate hearing from all of you guys. Your question and your comments are greatly appreciated. I respect each question, and I try and answer and give the best answer that I can. So keep them coming, and let's just get ready for application season and see if we can draw some tags. God bless you guys. Guys, I also want to ask you guys a favor. If you can go on, if you listen on iTunes, if you could go on and give the JScott Outdoors podcast a good review, not only a 5-star review, but if you could give me some positive actual written comments, that helps our placement on iTunes. You can follow along our adventures at JScott Outdoors on Instagram. My associate Dar Colburn at Dar Colburn on Instagram. You can find our Facebook page is JScott Outdoors on Facebook, the business page. And then, of course, my website, jscottoutdoors.com. And then Dar and I have our guiding website, colburnscottoutfitters.com.